and I might just repeat. So welcome everyone. We're starting, I'm repeating myself, I know. We're starting the series about community building in deep adaptation. And we've taken the title from Jem's post in his blog about the love in deep adaptation. And I'm just quickly going to read that again. Deep adaptation refers to the personal and collective changes that might help us to prepare for and live with a climate-induced collapse of our societies. And we're going to start with a wonderful interview with Kimberly Hare. And Kim is busy building a community in her local area. Thanks, Chris. We've got a couple of questions about Kim so that people can learn more about who you are and what it is that you're busy doing. Dorian, did you want to ask the first question or shall I?
Well, sure. Thanks. So Kim, you co-created a community group in Hertfordshire called Heart, which I think stands for Hertfordshire Enabling and Adapting for Resilience Together. Can you tell us a bit more about what is the broad purpose of your group, and perhaps a little about the history of how it came to be and your role in bringing it to life?
Yeah, sure. Lovely to see everybody. I'll just, if I may, share screen. I'm just going to show you a couple of slides, which are from one of the webinars that we run. So yeah, Hertfordshire, if you don't know, is quite a large county in England, in the south of England. So we thought that was quite a cute little acronym there. We are collapse aware. And we advocate for prioritizing adaptation, deep adaptation, transformative adaptation to increase local community resilience. Really, those three words, local community resilience, sum us up. We're also very big on telling the truth as we know it. And we inform and support local leaders and policymakers. And it's really all about learning, supporting people to face our interconnected predicaments, to kind of look them in the face, but from a place of courage and resilience, well-being and clarity. So between us, we do that with local authorities. We engage with our local transition towns in Hertfordshire and other community groups. Couple of us have set up community gardens in the kind of local area where they live, which are proving very successful. And there's two of us on the core team of the community group who have a background in psychology and therapy, including myself. So we offer free support for people experiencing eco-distress, climate anxiety, just struggling with it all. And we offer, again, free workshops and retreats. And I've given you the website there. So a twin focus really, awareness, education, advocacy, and then contributing practically and emotionally to community resilience. Those are the two things. And very much trying to model love, kindness, compassion, and build this kind of co-nourishing network to learn from each other. And really just, this is the last slide, Rob Hopkins, this is a Rob Hopkins quote: if we wait for government, it'll be too late. If we act as individuals, it'll be too little. If we act as communities, it might just be enough. Yeah, so we started about 3 years ago. I co-founded the group, and with somebody that I actually met through the Deep Adaptation network. We found each other on the map that's there. And this was pre the pandemic. We met up initially for a cup of coffee locally and kind of laid our plans from there. And then since then, we've been joined by other people, and But on what we call the core team, there's really only 4 people. But we are growing the network of people that engage with us and participate in our events. Yeah, so that's who we are. And we've also been taking a stand, and I like the ambiguity of that, taking a stand at various kind of eco-fests and festivals and gatherings all around the county over this last year, once the kind of lockdown restrictions lifted, and just having conversations with people. So yeah.
Thanks, Kim. One thing I've heard from many people who have tried to gather folks around themselves to launch local initiatives is that it can be quite challenging to find ways to bring together the different energies and intentions that people may have. So I'm curious, first of all, as to how the core team that you co-founded, if you found any methods or processes to bring people around a common set of goals. It seems that you have quite a well structured twin focus in what you do. Anything you'd like to share on this level?
Yeah, no, it can be a challenge. I think that core team of 4 are very strong, but with the exception of myself, because I'm lucky enough to, this is pretty much all I do now. So I spend a lot of time on it. But the other 3, you know, without any fault of their own, are very time poor. So it can be a challenge to, you know, get things done. We want to be democratic. We want to be, but you know, life gets in the way. One of them has very young children. One of them is still running a very busy business. And so it's kind of, yeah, it can be just hard. Sometimes I feel like it's all happening too slowly, but that's okay. In terms of growing that core team, which we want to do, yeah, that's very challenging. Because although you know, we've had some small wins, I think, and our network is growing all the time, and our webinars and workshops are becoming more popular as time goes on, we're still only really engaging with a very, very, very small slice of the population. What we would call, you know, column 3 and column 4, which is the kind of people that realise, have woken up to this as an emergency, or are collapse aware. So one of the frustrations, I guess, particularly with the local leaders and local authorities and councillors and politicians, is that they're not coming from the same place yet. So for me, it's all about what's the premise that you're operating from, and if your main focus, what's most important now, is reaching net zero by 2050, then clearly that's going to drive everything that you do. That's going to drive your action plans, your strategies, and so on. But interestingly, it depends. I mean, that's why we're such big believers in telling the truth, and so few people are. When we have conversations with those local leaders, it kind of depends who else is in the room. So, you know, when we ask them to officially say what they think is happening, they will be quite mainstream and conservative and, you know, optimistic. And then when we get them on their own and there's nobody else listening, then they open up a bit more and become a bit more yeah, it's really dire, it's really bad. So yeah, that can be frustrating. And we did we did a report for councils last November, which we sent round to every single council, and really kind of inviting them to widen their focus, widen the questions that they're asking. So rather than just how can we achieve net zero, how can we build resilience now? How can we adapt now? Which is something that most of them haven't even begun to think about so far. So we have very good relationships with the people we have relationships with, but as I say, it's a tiny slice.
Kim, it sounds like it's quite difficult to get those conversations started. And I wonder if, from your experience in talking to local councillors, and also it sounds like you sent the report to possibly a wider network, if you have advice for others, perhaps in other countries and in different political structures, how best are you educating, trying to educate these people? I mean, you're saying you get them on their own, you can have one conversation, you get them in a group, you have a different conversation. So
yeah.
do you have techniques, do you have some ideas of what's been working, where it has worked?
Yeah, well, in the UK, at least, one of the things that councils have been tasked to do is to engage local communities in their climate action plans. So that goes in our favour. And we very much make a point when we're kind of embarking on those relationships to, we're coming from a place of support, resources, help, being, and many of the councils now regard us as what they call a critical friend. So rather than kind of, I mean, this, everybody on this call knows this, but it's not a case of going to them and, getting angry. It's about saying, look, we're here. We've actually, we have a lot of knowledge and resources and support that we could offer, and doing that in a way that reflects our values, which is all about kindness and compassion and love. So actually, it's not been difficult. Well, no, that's not true. There are still people that we've asked to engage with that haven't come back to us after 3 years, and we kind of gently keep reminding them. But on the whole, it's relatively okay to ask for a meeting, or we have a whole list of people that we just send them useful stuff on a regular basis by email, and they seem to appreciate that. But what we really love doing, as I say, is developing a deeper relationship than that. And then they might come to our initial 2-hour webinar, which we do monthly. I know, Wendy, you came along to one of those. In fact, we've got another one this evening. So that's kind of an introduction to resilience, adaptation, and deep adaptation. And then when people have been through that, they often kind of engage with other events. In fact, now might be a good time to share. So this is one of the pages of our website. This is upcoming events. So you can see we've got that webinar tonight. And we also have conversations with other people. Here's one on the 10th with Michael Dowd, who many of you may know from postdoom.com. And then we have reconnection calls, just to kind of keep in touch with people. And this one on the 15th of February is all about finding your thread, what might be yours to do. So that's quite a popular one. Later on in February, we have a conversation with John Doyle from the European Commission, who's a very funny Irishman. and he's probably, I'm sorry about that, my phone's going. He's very, very pessimistic about our chances. So probably nearer to the kind of near-term human extinction, but a very, very charming, interesting thinker. And then we have a conversation with somebody on donut economics and community wealth building. We also run these regular emotional resilience workshops for people who are struggling. So again, that's in addition to the one-to-one work that we do. We often run those in groups. More conversations. Oh, and this one with Franny Armstrong, who you may know from Spanner Films. She did The Age of Stupid and Riverside, and the recent film, which was called The World's End, all about COP26. Very gifted, award-winning filmmaker. And then that's The Edge. So that's the 4-day retreat in May. So
tell us a bit about The Edge, which I think people might be interested in, Kim?
Yeah. Well, there's actually only one place left, but we do run it regularly. So yeah, it's a 4-day deep dive for people who are really have woken up or are just about waking up, and again, helping people to stand tall, face it, from resilience, courage, well-being, joy, creativity, clarity, and really helping people to inquire what might be their own unique thread, what might be theirs to pick up. And it's a mixture of psycho-spiritual support, deep adaptation, the 4 R's, and also some of the work that reconnects Joanna Macy.
Kim, what's important about that is that's an in-person retreat. It's quite unusual in deep adaptation. I mean, most of our stuff is on Zoom, but that you're actually able to do in person, aren't you? Yeah, and it's that's my greatest joy. That's my thread, facilitating that particular retreat. And it was great. The last one we ran in November, end of November, beginning of December. It was such a diversity of people. It was fantastic. The youngest person was 17 and the oldest person was 94. Wow. So, just great. The possibility for relationship building must be amazing, that you're actually all together in rooms. Yeah. Able to have real heart-to-heart conversations. Absolutely. Lots of tears, lots of laughter, lots of dancing, lots of hugging, it's an amazing experience. Beautiful. We have a couple of people visiting with us on the Zoom call, so we were wondering if anyone had questions for Kim about what they're doing and how Kim is doing things and how they started, or we can open the floor if anyone has a question.
Can I ask something?
Sure.
I was really interested in your work, and I shared what was going on with, I started out from a deep adaptation perspective, but in XR. Right. And so I was sharing it with my local group, and got a mixed response. Those of us who are already doing regeneration stuff and holding active listening circles are very open to it, and people involved in the climate emergency hubs, but it's really difficult to get it out there to people who are very activist minded. And I just wondered whether you'd had a similar experience or whether you'd just not had any connections with XR in your local area.
Huge amounts of connections with XR. In fact, I think on the last Edge program, 70% of them were XR. And we get a lot of XR people coming along to the webinars and workshops and things. And I get the sense, I mean, I'm an XR member myself, I get the sense that the mood is shifting a bit, rather than being, just here's our demands and it's all about activism and it's all about the government's got to do it. I think the conversations I have with lots of XR people, they're kind of, I just sense the shifting mood. about that. And, you know, we're very clear that there is no one right way. I have a tremendous respect for XR and what it's done in terms of moving the Overton window and raising awareness. Absolutely fantastic. And for me, part of that, finding your unique thread, finding your own nudge, is exactly that. You know, for some, that is theirs to do. For other people, it might be just raising really resilient kids. For other people, it might be growing food. For other people, it might be, you know. So, and I think one of the profound things about deep adaptation is there isn't a map. And learning to get more comfortable with that maplessness is, I think, one of the key skills we all need going forward. So no, we've not, I can't remember any kind of pushback, particularly from activists, although some of them probably feel when they open up to us, there's a slight kind of, am I being disloyal to XR, even you know, considering collapse, and it's part of their own kind of emotional and spiritual journey in terms of that. We have had pushback from a very, very small number of people who I would say are still in the, no, we're going to turn all this around and it's all going to be fine, and the kind of techno-fix optimists and those kind of people. We had one person early on who just threw a complete hissy fit in one of the webinars and just couldn't bear to even talk about it. So that's fine. And we're quite careful now to clarify up front. You know, we're very overt about our stance, if you like. So I guess people that really disagree with us just don't come.
Yeah. Something.
Yeah.
Johnny, I suppose one of the things I'm struggling a bit with, and I don't know if you've had any experience of this with any of your engagements with people, but I live in Orkney now, and I've been here for about 3 years. I grew up here, so I've moved back and for lots of different reasons, but it's a deeply religious place in lots of regards. And the whole deep adaptation and collapse theory doesn't go down well with people who are often, well, my experience is, if you ever start to talk about collapse, is that the power of prayer and God will save everything. And I just wondered if that's in your experiences of working with people, whether I suppose it's almost a taboo subject, really.
Right.
About religion and talking about deep adaptation. No, it's something that's been bothering me in the back. Right. I mean, I'm personally, I believe in God, but I would say I'm more agnostic rather than, I used to be a Christian. So I suppose it's an internal struggle for me, and it's the council here in the parish, in the county in Orkney, is very much run by Baptists. And I just wonder how you would approach a local authority here.
Yeah.
Island community of 24,000 people.
Right.
Opposed to Hertfordshire, which obviously has got St Albans, massive, there's diversity of communities and such like. I suppose I'm asking lots of different questions there, but I think you get.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's interesting. One of the people that's booked on the next Edge retreat is a nun.
Right.
So that's fascinating.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of our core team, Karen, is a deeply committed Christian.
Right.
So I don't know. and
It's probably not a fair question because it's so broad.
yeah, I think it depends on the individual, and I guess their relationship with their faith, and you know, what they think is how they make meaning of what's happening, how they make meaning of collapse in the context of their faith. Yeah, thank you.
If I can jump in really quickly on this topic, Johnny, you might want to get in touch with some folks in the Deep Adaptation Forum who have started an interfaith group. And so some of them might have some insights that that could be useful. So I'll send you an email address in private so you can connect with one of those folks. I see a hand up from Neil. Go ahead, Neil.
Sorry, we've got two controllers here and one keyboard. Firstly, if I could just have a very quick response to Johnny. Johnny, happy to have a chat with you, not experienced deeply in the specifics of your situation, but worked in Australia with the Tuvaluan community 10, 15 years ago when we were looking at how potentially to relocate their entire nation from the Pacific. And they're very religious from a Christian perspective. And so some ideas there around how to tackle that. And secondly, with the eco-spiritual orders of the Sisters of Mercy from the Roman Catholic Church, and also the Faith Ecology Network, which are more trans-faith, linking back to social ecological systems. So if I can be of value, Doreen, perhaps provide you with that email address, or I can ping you there. Coming back to Kimberly, fantastic work you're doing,
Yes,
Kimberly,
yes.
and thank you so much for
Super.
the presentation that we saw recently that was shared about the work you've been doing with Hare, and also your diagram, especially the one with the columns, the green and yellow columns. And my sense there is that each of those vertical columns is a transformational shift for each person in those columns. And so the psycho-spiritual leap at each point is consciousness or spirituality or understanding of systemic crisis or reconnection with self. Do you see a vertical thread here? Because
What a great question.
Because you're seeing people who can't show up whole in their roles and yet want and have a latent desire for transformational change internally and for their organizations and institutions. And if we can provide them with a bridge of boats to get across, rather than we all have to be in the same boat at the same time, there's a vertical connection. And so I'm interested in your experiences, how you got to this point with the connections with the local councils. So there's obviously pre-work to get into that. Speaking presumably with trusted elders or people that can walk in on the arm of, and where to next, what happens next? Because the critical next step is, where are the physical exemplars on the ground where sufficient critical mass is actually creating these islands of sanity with the resilience model?
What a great question. And just for those that aren't familiar with it, let me just share that diagram. So it's kind of, column 1 is mainstream, column 2 is business as usual but greener, column 3 is emergency, so that might include XR or but really transformation, systems change. And then column 4 is collapse aware. And as you'll see there, that final row, Paul Chifurka's work, stage of awakening, which is kind of like the levels of consciousness about this, if you like. And in column 1, he calls it asleep rather cruelly. Column 2, awareness of one fundamental problem, usually greenhouse gas emissions. Column 3, awareness of many problems and the interconnectedness. And column 4 is everything. It's the whole kit and caboodle. Yeah, so, but no, that's a fantastic question that you asked. And I have to admit, I don't know, but it would really reward, I think, some fantastic wisdom if we were to reflect on that. I guess I think at the moment, and this remains open to change, I don't believe councils are are ever going to get on with this in any serious way. Therefore, from the ground up, local community resilience. And if we look at, you know, some of the, if we look at the different approaches to adaptation, thinking about, you know, the work of people like Rupert Reed, who's talking a lot now about transformative adaptation. Let me just share this. So you got shallow, which is really kind of based on the, you know, managing the predictable risks, but within the current paradigm. And deep adaptation we all know about, and transformative adaptation has a lot of overlap with deep adaptation. But where we do see examples of adaptation so far in the UK, it's very, very, you know, just getting going, and it's all shallow, or what's sometimes called defensive. So starting to happen slowly, but nowhere near enough. And you know, although we do have conversations with people in councils about this, they are so far from even beginning the work of doing anything that's in those second two columns, which is again why we offer that, you know, as a place that people can come, because you're right, it's a complete psycho-spiritual shift. And then so I don't think, even though we're doing that work and we'll carry on doing that work with councils, I'm not holding out much hope. I quite like, again, from Rupert Reed, now talking about building a moderate flank. That again, there's probably more mileage in some of these things. So, you know, really engaging with workplaces. So, you know, if you take a large employer and get enough people engaged in this inside that employer, and have them, you know, insist, advocate, or we withdraw our labour. Local communities, professional associations, trade unions, and a good example of a kind of profession, I mean, it's net zero again, unfortunately, rather than adaptation, but you've got something like Lawyers for Net Zero. So I think there's more hope in those kinds of angles for me than councils. The other thing that I was kind of, not surprised, but disappointed to learn, the sense I get when we talk with councillors and people who are kind of sustainability officers, that's their day job, the overriding sense I get is how powerless they feel. They don't have any resources, they don't have any money, they, you know, depending on the political party that's in charge in that particular council, you know, they're frustrated and wading through treacle as well. So I think it's a mistake to think, you know, if only we could get them to agree, suddenly everything would happen in the way that we want. But you know, it's slow. Who knows? Who knows? Again, we're back to the maplessness. I don't know if that answers your question, Neil, but yeah, it'd be, I've made a note, and I would love to think more about those different bridges and pathways.
Wonderful. Just a very quick follow-up comment, if I could. Kimberly, happy to connect with you and discuss this in more detail. Got some ideas potentially about how to use institutions to help to bring councils along. And so, you know, Professor Ian Lowe in Australia says that politicians don't lead, they see a passing parade and jump in front of it. Right? And so if you can get enough critical mass of the ecosystem of players that are moving in the right direction, I mean, all it takes, for example, in Australia is for a rich property developer to come along and they'll rezone the land. So what would happen if a whole community says, we want to rezone all the land here to change what is possible to do here? And then how do we do that? And the local governments control the rules, However, with enough people, we can demonstrate how the rules need to be shifted, but we're also going to need the resources to justify why we should change property ownership or other things. So there's some levers there we can't guarantee, but we've been playing with some of that thinking for a while. And if it's of value to you,
Fantastic,
it's
fantastic.
of value to us to know where you're at when we bring that together.
No, I'd love that. I'd love that. And I've just put my email address in the chat. So please, it'd be great to have a conversation. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Super. Thank you.
Alan, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, thanks, Kimberly. I find this really helpful. I'm involved with a group doing somewhat similar work to you on a smaller scale at an earlier stage in a town called Bridport, which is a southwest Dorset, 16,000 people coastal market town. I think I've got 3 questions we cope with that. Firstly, is there a chance you could share the slides, because there's a lot of really useful information on there? Secondly, just a small crumb of good news for people. We actually do have a town council here who are really at least at the column 3 emergency stage. So I've got 2 questions about how to take that further. One is, I mean, I suppose my impression from working on this for 2 years with limited progress in getting it beyond the usual suspects is that it's probably easier at this stage to get people getting to grips with emergency than collapse. So my feeling would be to try and get some coalescence around emergency. At least it's a sort of, you know, it's adjacent to collapse, if you like. And I said in Bridport, the town council are you know, at least talking that language. I'd value any advice you've got about what specific kind of steps you would suggest we advocate. For example, I'm now at a point of starting a social media campaign in Bridport to talk about, well, what kind of emergency we're talking about, and the official Dorset County emergency, whatever it's called, forum actually does highlight flash floods and emergency weather events and power cuts. So, you know, there's an official view that there are a high risk of emergency events happening in our community. Do you have a sort of checklist, or do you have advice that you would give to households about that? And the last bit is, how would you work with the local authorities themselves to sort of help them take it further?
Right.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's brilliant, and thank you for everything you're doing in Bridport. So one of the things to refer you to is, and if you send me an email, I can send you the whole report, is to look at that report we did to councils, because that looks at 8 areas. And it's not sort of trying to tell them what to do, it rather kind of asks questions or invites them to ask questions of themselves. And very often we've found, just reading that report, people shift from at least column 2 to column 3, or maybe even column 4. As a friend of mine calls it, I think this is Vinay Gupta's work, which is quite dramatic, but I think can be useful. 6 ways to die. If you think about all the ways to die, you know, that can be a good heading for all the things to be thinking about. Again, if you drop me an email, I'm very happy to share that report. What was the last question? I do apologise.
I was asking, what specific emergency responses would you suggest to households, and how would you work with a local authority that's least on board with the idea that there are emergencies going to hit us quite soon?
Yeah, I'm just hesitating, because I do have some resources on that which I can send you, but I don't have it off the top of my head. Again, reading that report to councils may help give you a few ideas. But let me make a note. And in fact, if you, Alan, if you put your email address in the chat, I'm happy to send you some other stuff that that we've been looking at recently. And it'd be great to have a chat with you as well, separately.
No, I'd really appreciate it. I mean, we're struggling with the same issue as you are about how you get beyond a sort of tiny minority. So I'd love to sort of share ideas on that. Thanks. I'll put my email in the chat.
Fantastic. Thanks, Alan.
Beth, would you like to ask your question? And just to mention, we've got about 12 minutes left, Dorian. Yeah, not to limit you, but just to say, yeah, we go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess I have more of an initial comment, and then maybe it'll lead me to clarify a question. But so I'm in Kansas City, Missouri, and I am one of the founders of a new school called the Kansas City Restoration School. And so everything that you said has really resonated with me. And I love this idea of bridges of boats that you shared, Neil. It really, so our school seeks to be an anti-racist, trauma-informed, equitable economic school of the future. I myself am collapse aware and am here, you know, both as a individual human, parent, educator, entrepreneur, and spiritual being. I feel, you know, a part of what the conversation is about, you know, activating a bigger community to do the work, because we are a staff of 2 currently. We just launched with 16 students and a parent circle. We've developed a time bank. We're a sociocratic, restorative justice, hybrid, you know, kind of ever pivoting baby micro school. And in the United States, at least, modern education is also collapsing. Our economy is also collapsing. Our environmental systems and of course, you know, everything that we know through deep adaptation is happening. And there's this intersectional reality. And so the question of building community that's imbued with love and magic, I don't know how you could do it without children being involved. I think the great unifying space to reclaim is schools. And I think that deeply adapted schools are going to be much smaller and more resilient, in that today, for example, is a snow day. And we had in the parent circle, you know, yesterday we thought, you know, well, we can actually come back to school today. And then something happened through the night and more weather came in and we all, you know, chimed in. Okay, no school today. It's not safe. Even though we had said we would, you know, and we're a micro school, we're baby, but we're on the cusp of this, like, creating this culture that is understanding of our interdependence, but not, I would say, not yet collapse aware. So I guess my question for you, I'm going to bring it back around, is, as you know, as a founder, I feel quite free to bring my understanding of collapse awareness to the community, knowing that it could, you know, drive people to say peace and we're out of here. But I feel very compelled to do so because sorry, let me get to my question. So how would you approach adding a layer of collapse awareness to a fledgling school community that's already very progressive and does have a lot of people that I imagine are collapse aware? How would you integrate collapse awareness into an already maybe adjacent, because everybody's fleeing the school emergency collapse that's happening. Everybody that's coming to us is saying, we do not want to put our kids in that situation.
Yeah.
So how do we bring the truth of collapse into a system where people are already dealing with collapse and not freak them out?
Well, so again, the way we do it is we share those 4 columns, or I mean, actually it's really 6 columns, because you've got near-term human extinction on the other side of collapse, and then you've got denial, which is kind of column 0. But we share that, and then we start a conversation. And there's something about having it in a, in a picture or a graphic or something that kind of, I don't know, just makes it seem like, let's have a conversation about this. Where do you sit? What are your concerns? I just want to say one quick thing about the not freaking out. Yeah, we don't want to freak people out. And there are psychological implications, as probably everybody on this call realizes. So there is going to be grief, there is going to be sadness, there is going to be a huge kind of throwing up in the air of all of my stories. Yeah. And I think for me, what I've learned is you can't just skip over that. You can't just kind of smooth that over and make it okay. People have to go through that. And there are great gifts on the other side of it, in our experience, but it's not, I love that. What's that quote? Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing that isn't faced can be changed. So I guess it's saying, expect that. And that's why it's so important to us that we have the psychological, psycho-spiritual support available for people, rather than just to kind of, share all this with them and then say, right, bye. Yeah, so I don't know if that helps, but I love what you're doing. And I think you're right. I think education and kids is, really, really central part of all of this. And the kind of things we're teaching them as well. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for this question, Beth. And Kimberly, so we're just a few minutes till the top of the hour. Wendy and I wanted to wrap up this call by inviting you to share with us, and whoever will watch this video later on, any ways that people in the Deep Adaptation Forum or elsewhere could help you in your efforts in Hertfordshire, or more broadly, and maybe what kind of help or support you might be looking for. And also, in case people want to just keep an eye on what's happening with your community group, how can they just follow your activities and get involved somehow?
Yeah, oh, that's so kind, thank you. Well, you can go, you can join a Facebook group, but you're probably a member of too many Facebook groups already. You can go to our website, which is heartcommunitygroup.org, and find all of the upcoming events. You can join the events. Something that I didn't say is you don't have to be living in Hertfordshire to come to the events. We have other people coming as well, and another way you could help is perhaps be interviewed by us, so we could learn from you. We could find a date, and we could, again, like we're doing with some of the other Q&A interview series that are coming up. I'm sure we've got heaps to learn from you as well. So yeah, if you wanted to offer that, that would be fantastic. Yeah, that's all I can think of at the moment, but thank you.
Kim, I found it immensely rich. Sorry, I'm interrupting someone who.
It was me. Go ahead, Wendy.
I was just going to say, yeah, we're pretty much at the top of the hour. If you wanted to summarize anything, but thank you so much. It feels like a big step for me. I know you've been doing this work for a while, but to open it up a bit more and to hear that other people are trying to do similar projects, we really hope that we can create a community process where we speak more about what individuals are doing. Because I think sometimes you can feel very on your own, even though there are 4 of you, you're fighting this massive inertia. It's quite nice to hear that elsewhere in the world, people are doing quite close to people trying to do similar things. And there must be loads of ways that you can support.
Yeah, no, that would be lovely. And part of what, you know, we're clear about, just to finish, is we're sort of, you know, that phrase, in an emergency break glass. We're trying to create the networks and relationships now, not necessarily so that people do the right things now, but also so that, you know, when the shit does hit the fan, those networks are there.
And that they know that you're there, yeah, that they've heard of you and they know a bit about your truth telling, and yeah, it's very rich, very, very rich, I must say. And I must recommend to everyone on the call to try and attend one of Kim's sessions. It's very inspiring and very useful personally, but also if you're doing any kind of local community development, the techniques that Kim's used, because she's obviously very experienced with this type of work and type of presentation, that presentation is actually really useful to copy bits of, and she's very generous about sharing her material as well. So I just highly recommend. It's on the events list that I've shared.
Fantastic, yeah, and happy to send anybody a copy of that slide deck in its entirety. Use as you wish.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kim, and everyone for joining. Thank you, Wendy, for co-hosting with me. Just want to point out that there are many useful links in the chat, including some private messages maybe some of you might want to see. Please feel free to get in touch with me if you'd like to be put in touch with anyone you've heard about in this conversation. I just put my email there.
Fantastic.
So
thank you so
Does everyone
much.
know how to save? Sorry, Anne. Does everyone know how to save the chat?
Do you know how to send the chat?
Yeah, but